Hello, all, and welcome back to Phenomenology Club. Here with a fun discussion and another film review. I've done a few of these. I think this is technically my third film review. But of course, it will be a discussion as well. Winging this one hardcore, didn't really come in with notes. I made a few notes, so let me just pull them up real quick. How should I preface this? I guess I'll preface it by saying, first and foremost, this is about the film Cuties, which I viewed last night on my lonesome. A lot of people are talking about this film, so I was like, shit, I love talking about stuff. I'm gonna watch this film so that I can talk about this film. Amelia says, I feel like this is about to get real uncomfortable real quick. It could, and I'm kind of scared. I might say something that will scare people, but fuck it. That's actually what I like. That's what I aim for with my brain, so that works for me. Fuck it. Have you guys seen it? I guess what I'll say is spoiler alert. I'm just gonna say spoiler alert. I'll try to maybe not give no, I'm gonna give spoilers. I don't care. Fuck it. Fuck you. Who cares? I mean, it's not like I will say it's not a movie where there's all these twists and turns or something that you really need to worry too much about spoilers. I pretty much knew what the film was about going into it, and you couldn't have given me that many spoilers. There's not that many, but I will probably be discussing specific plot points, so spoiler alert, I guess. Anyway, so I went to watch this film because everybody's talking about it. For those of you who don't know, this film Cuties is about these 11-year-old girls, well, specifically this one 11-year-old girl who joins a team of other 11-year-old girls, and the controversy over the film is that when Netflix, who is the main distributor of the film in the US, when they went to promote this film, they came out with this poster that was the girls, the 11-year-old girls, highly sexualized, you could say. I put an image of the poster in my thumbnail. Barbie, you haven't seen it? I mean, I'm gonna try. Like I said, it's not really a film where any spoilers is really going to make it or break it. You really do have to see the film, I think, to have an opinion on it. And I already knew this. I mean, first and foremost, what's the point of talking about any film you haven't seen? I've seen a lot of people discussing the film and they haven't seen it, which irritates me, obviously, because the film's out there. If you want to have an opinion on it, go fucking watch it, right? So I was like, let me watch this thing, especially since I'm seeing it's about all of these controversial topics relating to sexualization of young girls, feminism, all these other things that I love to think about. And I don't trust fucking Twitter or whatever else other social media platform to give me a nuanced opinion of such things. Twitter is fucking stupid. Everyone on there is a fucking moron. So I knew that I would not agree with the majority of the takes that I'm seeing about this film. And I have to say, I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted after watching the film. First of all, have any of you seen it? I'm conflicted. And the number one reason I'm conflicted is because, first of all this controversy around the film exists around its messaging, right? It's all about is it promoting the sexualization of 11-year-old girls? Is it not? What is the message? I need to know the message before I can have the most moral take on this film. And that already makes me feel conflicted because I'm somebody who actually kind of feels very averse to messaging in my films, period. I'm fine with a film having a message, but I will not watch a film for a message, and my opinion of a film will not be made or broken by the messaging. Personally, I don't care if there's a film that promotes the sexualization of young girls. If it's a good film, I'll be able to say so, personally. Or you could have the opposite message. If it's a good film, if it's a bad film, my opinion of whether or not it's a good or bad film will ultimately be at least 1 degree removed from what I perceive the messaging to be. But this film, Cuties, is really interesting because the way it's filmed seems to kind of be a part of the message. And I guess I'll talk about it a little bit. So this is what I'll say. Spoilers incoming, I guess. You know, when this film poster first came out of the 11-year-old girls in their little dance outfits, the cuties, a lot of people were really mad, and they were saying that this was a misstep by Netflix, who apparently was not promoting the film in accordance with its message. Its message, which is actually sort of against or calling under question Western society in particular's hypersexualization of little girls through media, and just the kinds of messaging that we give to women and girls in general about, you know, how basically we exist as objects, sexual objects, to be commodified and to be consumed, you know. And watching this film, first of all, the feminist messaging is clear. And I actually found the feminist messaging to be kind of brave and interesting. For one, the film follows this 11-year-old girl who is part of a Muslim household. She lives with her mother and her brothers. Her mother, who is raising them on their own because, spoiler alert, her polygamous father, who I believe still is in Senegal, has recently taken another wife. And we see the mom crying about this. The mom is a sympathetic figure very early on in the film. We feel very strongly for her. She's raising these kids on her own. Meanwhile, they're going to these, I don't know if you would call it mosque. I don't know where the building was. It looked like it might have been in their apartment building. But they're having, like, I don't know. Fuck, I'm not Muslim, but Muslim groups, I don't know, church, Muslim church, I don't know what the fuck you call this. And they're talking about, I mean, it's really made me harken back to my Christian days, because, you know, Islam and Christianity are practically the same thing in a different package. One of the earliest scenes we see are like Muslim women talking about how the devil or demons dwell in the bodies of women, and this is why women must be covered and be modest and all this, you know, basically what you expect to hear from Christians too, you know, because they're on the same bullshit. But especially in the West, in America at least, I know it's very different in Europe. This film is from a French filmmaker. I believe she's Senegalese herself. How do I say her name? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'll read it. But anyway, what was I saying? Shit. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I've never really seen, like, a feminist film call out sexism in Islam. This is something that has been, I feel like, really taboo for the past few years. Especially people in the West, especially, are so afraid of being perceived as racist that they will not even stand up for all of the women that are fighting so hard in places like Iran to be able to remove their hijab without being imprisoned, you know, to such an extent that, like, it's really kind of evil, the extent to which we pretend to care about women in the Islamic world and totally turn a blind eye to all their issues. I think specifically about when that shooting happened in New Zealand of that mosque, you know, and then the prime minister or whoever, I don't know, in New Zealand they had this mass demonstration where all these white New Zealand women came out wearing hijabs in support of Muslim women, and this happened like a week after I forget her name, but this woman in Iran who was a lawyer fighting for the rights of these women to be able to remove their hijab in public. She was thrown into prison, sentenced to like 39 lashes or whatever kind of fucking bullshit they have going on there, where basically like it was like just short of being a death sentence. So it's like all of these women are in prison and like getting fucking lashed almost to death fighting the hijab, and a week later we have all these white New Zealanders out here like, ooh, the hijab, I'm going to like show this, like, I'm trying to like show an act of solidarity with Muslim women. Like, what fucking world do you live on? There's women literally being thrown into prison. Like, what the fuck? It's like so tone deaf. We're so fucking ignorant over here. We just like, you know, it's I'm too afraid of like being perceived as whatever by my Twitter mutuals. I'm just going to pretend that everything's honky dory. Anyway, what was I saying? So that was interesting. Seeing a film call out the sexism of Islamic culture. I've never witnessed that before, but I also don't really watch feminist films, I guess, or like French films, period. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of different shit going on in Europe. So that was cool. And then on top of that, this film definitely is very clear in its messaging against the hypersexualization of young girls. Basically, this young girl who's part of this Muslim household, her father is like out being a fucking bastard, getting another wife for himself, while his wife in Paris is taking care of their kids, you know. She finds this group of young girls who is a dance group, and they are emulating videos that they see on the internet where, you know, it shows them watching rap videos of all these girls like in thongs showing their asses and shit, you know, and the young girls want to be like these girls. And the juxtaposition of this with, you know, what we see her going through in the meetings, the Muslim meetings, Muslim church, I don't know. Is there a word for this? It's like the juxtaposition, it's really interesting because you can see, like, okay, she's getting all this harmful messaging at home, being told that, like, demons dwell in women's bodies and shit like this. Like, her grandma or auntie is, like, telling her, like, okay, you're a woman now. You're going to chop onions for 10 hours, shit like this, you know? And then seeing this perceived freedom of these girls living out a more Western reality in Paris, watching all of these Western rap videos and being free, quote unquote, by hypersexualizing themselves, you know, you can see why she gravitates to this sort of a thing. But essentially, in the end, I won't say the actual end, though it's really not a spoiler, but in the end, the message is abundantly clear that neither of these outlets are necessarily like good for women. They're both incredibly coercive. It kind of seemed like pretty deep feminist critique, or maybe it's not, but it was refreshing because we never get these kinds of messages now, especially if we're going to talk about places like Twitter. And a thing that we talk about on this channel all the time, you know, it's like, well, we in the West, we see it as like, well, yeah, the way to be free is to be like the Cuties, take all your clothes off and gyrate mindlessly for men on a stage and get money for it and get praise, and now you are sexually liberated. Aren't you so fucking lucky? No more sexual repression from your Abrahamic religion. Now you're free, cutie, go be free. Anyway. But, okay, so the messaging is abundantly clear, I think. There's no qualms about that. But the reason that I'm still conflicted is because when you really think about the film itself, you know, the language of the film itself, there are, like, ass shots of 11-year-old girls. And I'm like, what is the point of this visual language? You know what I'm saying? It's like I agree with the messaging. I totally am on board with the messaging. Whether or not I think it complements the film makes, like I said, I don't think that the message can make or break a film, but I have to think about how the film is made itself. And the fact that there are just like ass shots of 11-year-old girls, I have to wonder, I'm like, well, what is this? And of course it's intentional, you know? The director is obviously incredibly talented. Let me find her name. She seems like a badass, and I have to say, at the end of the day, I'm glad that this film exists and that a woman has made such a controversial film, because that's just fun and exciting to me, period, you know? Every time there's been any sort of, like, controversial film in film history, I feel like it's always made by some, like, creepy European guy or something, you know? Where it's like, I don't know, flowers in the attic or whatever. It's cool, personally, for me, to see a woman make a film that has become so fucking controversial. And it does feel as if she is being provocative on purpose, and that's part of why I'm conflicted, because I'm like, why are there ass shots of 11-year-olds in the movie? Like, I know that the director, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure the director was not like, ooh, that's hot, get that, that's hot. I feel like there's a reason that she did this, you know? And maybe the reason, I don't know, but maybe the reason is because it does make you uncomfortable and it makes you think, and it makes you think about the implications, because it's like, okay, if there's an ass shot of an 11-year-old in a movie, like, should the movie then not exist? Because why? Because it's catering to a group of sick fucking mostly men? Should we hide ourselves because of fucking sick men? I don't know. Like, I don't see an ass shot of an 11-year-old. I should stop saying ass shot of an 11-year-old. I don't see it and I'm like, ooh, that's hot. I saw it and I was like, oh my God, no. I was so uncomfortable, and I was uncomfortable because I was thinking about all the sick fucking men that are going to see this and get off to it. And it's like, well, does that mean then that she shouldn't make this film? It almost felt like she was doing it on purpose to be like, look, like, this is what you fucking, like, we live in a world where, like, you can't divorce an image of a young girl's body framed a certain way from the reality that, like, she will be forced to deal with the consequences of being seen this way, even though she really didn't do anything. We're just showing her in a certain way. The right framing, the right outfit, now she's doomed, you know? It's like you live within these certain set of parameters, and if you frame it right, if you do it right, then it's a problem. I don't know if I'm making sense right now. But, like, if the film was filmed differently, this is what I'm trying to say. If the film was filmed differently, I don't think there would be that much controversy. Yeah, there's, like, posters of these girls in these outfits and shit, but personally, I don't think they look any different than, like, fucking Dance Moms or something. I think the film, watching it, was so uncomfortable at some points because of all of these, like, incredibly... She really went in. Like, she did. It's very suggestive, and these girls are 11. There's close-up shots of them gyrating, twerking, like... It's very uncomfortable. It's clearly suggestive, but what is she suggesting is what I'm wondering, you know? And also, I mean, what are the ethical implications? Like, I'm somebody who doesn't really believe in censorship, period, you know? But this is verging on... I wouldn't call it... Oh, God. I don't know what to say. I'm like, wait, is YouTube gonna, like, have a problem with it? Let me read some chats for a second before I try to regain my thoughts. I'm, like, all over the place, sorry. I've been... Ask anyone in Phenomenology Club. I watched Cuties last night, and I've been begging someone else to watch this so they could talk to me about it. Like, I'm just getting on here to vent. I don't even know exactly what I think. That Goblin, they're trying to make people into predators, LOL. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Like I said, it's very abundantly clear from watching the film that this film exists with a very strong message, and a message that I think is absolutely feminist, and a message that I align with. What I find conflicting is the visual language of the film and why that exists, you know? Because like I said, if you film the film an entirely different way, I don't think it would be that controversial. It's literally the way that they shoot some of these scenes where I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to feel about this. I also have to concede that I do think that there is likely a cultural difference at play here as well, you know, because it's like people are talking about the rating and shit, and like, oh, if it was for young girls to see, and like, then why is it rated MA and shit? I heard that in France it's open to all audiences, you know. I don't know what the French rating system is like. I believe that France in general and a lot of European countries in general have much more lax attitudes about like nudity in general and stuff. I'm not trying to like say how I feel about any of it, any which way, but I do think that that's important to consider, that there could be a very large degree of cultural difference here as well, you know. Like, I don't know if watching the film as a French person or as the person who made the film, you know, she's a French woman, I think originally from Senegal. I can't find her thing. I had it pulled up on a webpage. I don't know the cultural difference. Maybe it's not quite as shocking if I'm a French person, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, I felt like she was pushing the envelope. There were places where I didn't feel like it was very controversial, and then there's places where it's like, oh, she's pushing it. And it's like, maybe she wasn't pushing it in France. I don't know what shit is like in France, because you have to think, too, that the way that we react to these kinds of movies does have a lot to do with normalization, and this is part of why I'm thinking about, like, the way that these certain scenes are shot. It's like there's a correlation when you see like a shot framed a certain way. You recognize that kind of framing, that kind of action, even of like twerking and shit. You correlate it immediately to all these hypersexualized images of women you already have in your head from the very kinds of videos that she's criticizing in her film itself, you know? Like even a thing like twerking, you know? I don't think that twerking is inherently like sexual, you know what I'm saying? But we have come to associate it as being hypersexual. I'm sure it's sexual on some level, you know. People say that all dancing is like technically some sort of mating ritual, and maybe that's true, you know. Within any culture, whatever kinds of different dances you do, you could arguably make the case that like this is all some like evolutionary psychology bullshit. You're trying to woo your mate, yada yada, sure. But a thing like twerking, you know, I think if I just saw twerking and had no idea what it was, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's so sexual, you know. Like you associate twerking now with being this like sexual thing because we're always seeing images of women twerking and it's supposed to be a sexual context. It's like we've created a sexual context for it, you know? So it's this like correlation. Like who knows how this film would be read and registered by people who exist in a world where like pedophilia is not rampant. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that also makes me wonder about the strength of the film itself, because how timeless is the message, you know? I think it's a very timely message. I don't know. And speaking of twerking, you know, another criticism I saw of the film that I think is really worth considering is like, I do wonder how people would respond to this if the main character was white, you know, because it's like, I've heard the argument made by black feminists, and I think that they make a great point that it's arguable that the only reason this film even got so far, because look how shocked and outraged people are, you know, is because the main character is a black girl. Two of the main characters are black girls, and then there's a girl who I believe is, I don't know, they were in Paris, so she might be Spanish, I don't know. And then there's a white girl. She's probably some sort of Eastern European. I don't know my European demographics, but I thought that was really interesting as well, you know. It's definitely true that, like, I think society is much more prone to just sexualize the bodies of black women and to see that as a given, you know, and then acts more shocked and outraged when it's a white woman. I think that's definitely worth considering, you know. The director herself is a black woman. I'm going to look up her name right fucking now because this is pissing me off. I can't pronounce it, but let's see. It's got, like, characters in there I've never seen. Maimona Dokori Ray? Ray? I don't know. She's super beautiful. French Senegalese film director. She's 35 years old. Go girl. 35 years old, and you are on the mouths of everyone. Everyone is talking about you. Go girl. I'm happy for her, I gotta say. Shit. Good for her. I can't wait to see what other films she makes in the future. I thought that it was a great film. It was made very well, you know. But of course, I'm still struggling with this visual language. Let me keep reading these comments. Clark Kent, message or not, it'll be perceived how it's perceived by the audience. Just because the writers didn't intend it to influence anything doesn't mean the viewers won't be influenced by it. Well, to speak of the audience, you know, this is something, and by the way, you said the writers. There's only one writer. The film is written and directed by Maimona. I'm sure I'm totally botching her name, and I'm very sorry. I have no idea how to say this. It's got a character I've never seen before. It's like an eye with 2 dots over it. No idea. Maybe it's French. I don't know. They speak French in Senegal, I believe. They speak French in France, and it's a French film. Anyway, the audience, thinking about the audience definitely makes me feel weird. Because, like, okay, personally, I think that this film would be great, is great for a female audience. Like, it starts discourse, the kind of discourse I'm always having with women, you know. But, like, I think if I watched this film with a man, I would probably be mortified, you know. Because I would just feel like, I don't know, I would feel like I'm complacent in something, like allowing a man to view these images in front of me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, and then I was thinking, I'm like, well, maybe, like, they should only let, like, young girls watch it or something. Like, I did think that the message was positive. But even then, it's like, well, the young girls might just see it and be like, oh, yeah, those girls look hot. And they're only 11 and I'm 11, you know? Either way, like I said, if a film is good, it's good. End of the day, like, message, whatever. Fuck it. You have a good message, you have a bad message. If you have a good film, you have a good film. I thought that the film was pretty good. I cried. I did cry. I cried. It was dark and sad. I won't tell you why I cried. That would be the one spoiler I won't give away. But I cried. I was very moved. I went through the motions of Cuties. Had a great time. It was a good film. But it's like, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, too, what, are we going to make films because of the perceived messaging, you know? Like, that's kind of pissing me off about this film, too. It's like, clearly the film has a message and should be judged on those grounds, I guess, because if you put your thing out there for critique, of course people are going to critique it. At the same time, it's like, well, why are people talking about this film only as if it, like, exists to promote a specific message, you know? Especially since the language of art is never really, like, ever fully articulated, right? Because, like I'm saying to you, the messaging is abundantly clear, but where I become conflicted is with the visual language of the film, and I don't know what the visual language is saying to me because it's not speaking to me with words. I can't really articulate exactly my problem with it, and whether or not I think that it's ethical or unethical, I don't know. I'm telling you, like, I'm feeling nervous about men watching this film, you know. At the same time, I know it was made by a feminist woman, a black woman from Senegal. Like, I agree with her messaging. I'm sure that we would, like, get along great in person, you know. A very talented director. Like, what should we say to her? You can't make your film. You can't talk about this issue because men will be titillated by it and get off to it. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like the whole, speaking of 9/11, because it is 9/11, it's almost the whole we don't negotiate with terrorists kind of thing, right? Like, are we going to negotiate with the terrorists, ladies? Like, well, we can't talk about this because pedos might be into it. We have to censor ourselves because we're afraid that the terrorist pedos are going to jack off to the film. You know, it's like, I don't know how to feel about that. Like, what? We should be at all times worried about what pedos are going to do with this. Of course, it raises the question of, like, okay, well, these are, like, real girls, you know, what kinds of implications will it have in their lives, you know? But then we go into the ethics of filmmaking. I don't really think the ethics of filmmaking are clear cut. I guess I have controversial opinions on this, period, you know, thinking of, like, cannibal holocaust and shit. My opinion's there. People have, like, called me unethical about my opinions on filmmaking. I don't fucking know. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading comments. Women can be predators, too. Yeah, sure, but where are they? Whatever. Call me whatever. Don't care. Clark Kent. Oh, wait, Barbie. Oh, okay, no, I'm gonna wait for that. Clark Kent. It's suggestive for no reason, IMO. I have little girls. Sure, she's my niece, but still, I've been with her all my life. I'd be damn pissed to see her portrayed that way. But this kind of goes back to what I was just saying, Clark Kent. Like, who are you pissed at, you know? It's kind of upsetting that we're having all these conversations and people are mad at the director that pedophilia is rampant. You know what I'm saying? Which makes me think about negotiating with terrorists. It's like, well, why is it this woman's fault that there are pedophiles literally everywhere? And this is exactly what she is kind of commenting on. So it's like, well, what's the solution? I'm not suggesting, of course, you have to make a film with like scantily clad 11-year-olds. It's the only way you can address pedophilia. But maybe part of why she made her film so shocking is because, isn't it true that pedophilia is an issue that is like never discussed ever? We pay lip service to it. We talk about maps on Twitter and shit, but like, where do you ever see people having really serious conversations about the sexualization of women, period, of young girls? You know, like it kind of is confusing that all of a sudden people have these strong opinions about the sexualization of girls and women. And it's like, what are you going to say to them? Like, if I was Twitter, I'd be like, well, don't worry. In only a few years, it'll be legal to sexualize them. And then they can all make an OnlyFans, you know? Because that's kind of the stance of like Western feminism right now, right? Like, it's fine as long as they're legal, but they're not legal. So fuck this woman for doing this and making this pedo bait, you know? Maybe it's almost like a calling out, you know? Like, well, you guys aren't going to talk about pedophilia. Like, I'm going to fucking shock you into talking about it. But then, of course, we're going to blame the woman for making this film instead of blaming society for allowing rampant pedophilia to go by unchecked, you know? Makes you think, really makes you think. And also this incredible sexualization of young women and girls, you know, that's going by totally unchecked as well. Makes you think. Amelia. I really do think the point of the scenes was to make people uncomfortable and think about what we're doing to our youth. Unfortunately, it just backfired because, you know, pedophiles. Well, did it backfire, though? I don't know. Look at us. We're out here talking about it. Shit. I'm not a pedophile. I hope none of you better be pedophiles. The fuck? So, shit. I don't know. The Moon. Sorry, I can't and won't watch that BS. I mean, you don't gotta. Let's keep reading. Just thinking about this movie and its message turns my stomach. To me, it's clearly propaganda. Propaganda for what? If you didn't see it, then I don't think you should have that opinion. Pedopropaganda to normalize little girls being sexually and sexually active. No age or race or culture should participate in it. See, I disagree with that take, The Moon. It is not pedopropaganda. If anything, I think it is clearly calling out the fact that there is pedopropaganda everywhere on the internet. Little girls have no role models. The only role models they have are girls that are incredibly sexualized themselves. You know, so of course little girls are going to emulate these kinds of things, and then we're just not going to talk about it. And then when girls do emulate this thing, and then when we go to the natural conclusion, which is to have 11-year-olds gyrating and twerking, you know, because this is what they're doing in real life and copying because they see it everywhere, then we're going to turn around and be mad at women for doing it, you know? Like, I've seen all on social media too, people are like, where are their mothers? Like, yes, let's blame their mothers, too. Let's blame the director. Let's blame the girl. Let's blame their mothers. Like, please. And look, I'm not saying that I think the message, that I agree with having all these ass shots of 11-year-olds, because like I said, I don't know, but I'm just speculating. I don't know. I wouldn't want my 9-year-old niece twerking in class. The boys will never see her as anything more than a gyrating object. Well, sorry to let you know this, Clark Kent, but the boys probably already only see your niece as an object, and that will continue likely for her entire life. There's nothing she can do to avoid that reality. That's just the facts, you know. Boys now are watching porn at ages like 11. We got 12-year-olds with erectile dysfunction because they're watching rape porn. Like, come on, shit is so bad. Like, you can't protect your girls no matter what, you know. And maybe this is part of why Maybe this is part of why the director just cast all fucking caution to the wind and was like, fuck it, damned if you do, damned if you don't, which kind of was the message of the film itself. It felt like it kind of felt like there's really no positive outlet for young girls, period. You're either in some sort of regressive, super conservative religion that tells you it's women's role and responsibility to cover up so that men don't do this or that to her, or she can basically become complicit in her own sexualization and just lean into that, But either way, you're fucked, So sorry to let you know, but it's just the truth. Like, if you have young girls in your life, there's nothing you can do to protect them from the reality that they're already doomed just because they're girls. So, shit. Wiley, it's definitely not okay, but I'm just saying that those people will always be there, and you shouldn't avoid films because of some pedos out there when the message is important. The Moon. Anyone can call themselves a feminist. That doesn't make any and everything they do okay. I do believe women and girls should make certain choices so we can't be taken advantage of. Again, I mean, good luck. Good luck trying to avoid being like sexualized and treated as an object. Like, you're not going to be able to do that by just like refusing to twerk or dressing Christian or whatever the hell, following the Christian modesty tutorials. You're fucked either way. You get an OnlyFans, you're fucked. You follow the Christian tutorials, you're fucked. You're fucked. If you're female, you're fucked. Doom, bitch. Take the black pill. Take black pill feminism. Let's go. Where's my black pillars? Let's go. Mind Ranger. You made me think discussing sexuality earlier for the Z generation may even be appropriate instead of heretic because of the way they are virtually growing up gazing mindless Android advertisements. I don't know. Amelia, I think pedophilia is a mental health problem. The only reason it's not talked about as one is because it's taboo. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to make this the pedophilia discussion. I don't know. In the context of this conversation, though, I think that you can look at pedophiles as a harm and doing a moral wrong, So, not going to go into, like, the ethics of, like, whether or not we think, like, pedophilia is voluntary or involuntary or hereditary or any of these things, But it is an interesting question to think about, like, well, to what extent should we be mindful of the pedophiles in the audience? At the same time, well, yeah, I mean, it's a hard question because it's like, well, if you're not a pedophile, you will see these images and you will not be titillated. Your shock comes only from knowing that there are pedophiles everywhere, right? And not only pedophiles, and I think that this is part of the outrage, but also just men who find this to be attractive and feel uncomfortable that they're seeing 11-year-olds and think that it's hot. That's just my hot take right now. I think that images of women being so sexualized, and this is part of what I was talking about, there being a correlation between even just like a dance move or a certain framing of a girl's body and shit. You cannot divorce yourself from all the pornography you see everywhere, all this media of women just like butt naked existing to be sexual objects for men to consume. You can't divorce yourself from this, so it's almost like an involuntary response when you see a scantily clad 11-year-old that your mind goes in the same direction. And maybe that's part of why the visual language for this film exists in the way that it does. Because even myself, I was uncomfortable feeling like my mind too was correlating these images with other images I've seen of women, legal women. So it's okay, because it's okay when they're legal women. So to see a woman who's a girl who's 11-year-old being filmed in the same way, doing the same things that we see women do day in and day fucking out on all our media, then you're like, oh no, it's wrong. This is fucked up, But it's like, well, we need to, that's a problem, you know, like, because it's gotten to the point, and this is why we tell young girls to cover up and shit. It's because if I see you and my mind correlates an image of you or your body in a certain way with all of these images I have of women already in my head, I can't divorce you from that image. So instead of fixing the reality, I'm going to force you to cover up, you know, instead of fixing the fact that, you know, we openly accept the hypersexualization of women everywhere, as long as they're 18 in America. We don't want to fix that. We'd rather just, like, make sure that young girls cover up. So as soon as they turn 18, we can have them take off their clothes, and then everything's great, you know? Clark Kent, I know she's fucked, doesn't mean rub it in. I'm not trying to rub it in. I'm trying to tell you, if you care, then you should think about these things, you know? If you care, then you want to know the fucking truth? That she's doomed? Like, you want to help her, and then you should know what you're up against. Shit. Ya shot who? You shot who? The mother should be the child's role model. What? Okay. The moon. I agree 100% with damned if you do or don't, but if we take certain precautions, we will be safer and less likely to be victimized. Yeah, that's true. The moon. Of course, you know, I don't like when people tell women, like, don't tell women not to be smart. Tell men not to rape. Like, men are always going to rape people, you know. Women should absolutely be smart, and we're all trying to be smart and vigilant, you know, obviously. Like, don't walk around in a dark alley by yourself if you're a woman. Just don't, you know. It sucks that you can't, and we should try to create a world where you can, but, like, that's just the reality, you know. Of course. Amelia says, I don't think this movie was the best way to address the sexualization of young girls. The only people that are going to watch this movie for that message are the people that already care about it. Well, I have to agree with you, Amelia, and maybe this is part of my hesitance to just, like, embrace the film completely, is that, you know, I don't think, well, who knows? Because, you know, I know that Europe has, like, actual feminists. I know we don't have any in America. So, like, I don't think that American audiences in particular are equipped to handle this film, which makes me feel like it's too soon. I don't know what goes through the mind of your average idiot fake feminist on Twitter that, like, thinks that, like, being naked for men for money is, like, a display of personal empowerment. Like, I don't know what that feels like, but I would assume that that person does not possess the kind of, worldview in which a film like this will actually have any sort of, like, meaningful impact on them, you know? So, and the same goes for thinking about, like, men, you know? I have to say, I was mortified thinking that men are gonna watch this movie. So, I'm not saying that, you know, I think it's, like, great. But, like, personally, I like any movie that makes people upset, because I'm an edgelord. So, like, I guess to wrap it up, I'll say that I'm conflicted as hell. I think the messaging of the film is abundantly clear. It's clearly a feminist film. It clearly has strong feminist messaging. There's no doubts about it. You'd have to be an idiot to see this film and not get the message. It's not even convoluted. It's very clear. But what complicates that and what gives me pause as far as considering the ethics of the film, not the strength of the film itself, but the ethics of it, which is what this whole controversy is, you know, around it. The visual language of the film itself, the ass shots of the 11-year-olds, the close-ups of them putting their fingers in their mouths, this kind of a thing. I don't know how to feel about it, but I do know that it's shocking, that it's an interesting conversation starter, and perhaps a necessary one, because no matter how much we like to think we talk about pedophilia and shit, we don't. Or about the sexualization of girls and women, period, we don't. It kind of feels like we're following the natural conclusion. I mean, young girls, 11-year-olds are on Twitter. You go on Twitter and you see all these girls talk about how feminist empowering it is to turn 18 and start your OnlyFans and all this and shit. Like, of course 11-year-old girls are going to be copying us, you know. Of course they're going to be gyrating, taking pictures of themselves naked to send to boys, doing all these things, trying to appeal to older men, all these things that I'm sure many of us can relate to when we were young girls. Confused about what was going on because no one actually talked about any of this with us, or at least with myself, you know. Part of why I think even when we're like preteens, we're talking to men in their 20s at the mall and no one ever told us to like watch out for them, you know. So I have to say I'm glad that people are at least having this conversation. So as far as the messaging goes, I think that it's an interesting conversation starter. And I'm glad that we could talk about it. As far as the filmmaking itself goes, I thought it was pretty straightforward. Beautiful lighting. Acting was great. These 11-year-old girls can act. That was great. Loved the woman who played the mother. The director was on point. Definitely will be looking out for her. Let me try to say her name one more time. I can't fucking say this. Maimona Decore, 35 years old, French, Senegalese. Definitely going to be looking out for her. Great job. Anyway, give me a thumbs up, please, if you like my review. I'm scared to look. It's probably going to have a ton of thumbs down, so I don't really care, whatever. I don't have an opinion on the ethics, but I like anything that makes me confused and conflicted, really. So I like that. You know, I would say I'm leaning towards the positive because what was clear about the message is things that I align with, you know. That there's really no solution. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I liked that messaging. It was really refreshing, especially as an American. So, shit. I guess go watch it if you're a woman. If you're a man, just leave it alone, I guess. I don't know what to say. Do what you want. Do what you will. Don't believe in censorship. Have a great day. Give me a thumbs up. I'll be back later, maybe this weekend, to do something that's not a film review. Who knows? Stay safe. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.